I wasn't supposed to hear it. I was at my desk, eyes glazed over as I stared at the endless spreadsheets glowing on my laptop screen. Then my phone buzzed. My father's name lit up the display. Frank Morgan. Once, that name had made me feel safe. Lately, it just made me tired. I answered, "Hi, Dad." No reply. I figured it was a poor connection until I heard it. The faint rustle of movement, the creak of a chair, then a deep sigh. And then his voice. "She's a complete failure. She's never going to make anything of herself." My stomach twisted. I didn't move. The phone stayed pressed to my ear like I was frozen. "Come on, Frank," my mother's voice chimed in, quieter but just as sharp. "She's doing fine. She pays the mortgage, doesn't she?" My father scoffed. "Bare minimum. After all we've done, you think I'm proud of her? She was a mistake, always has been, an embarrassment. She thinks she's made something of herself. Please. She's a joke, a mistake, a joke." The words landed like tiny knives, each one slicing deeper than the last. My throat dried. My grip on the phone tightened. I wanted to scream, to hang up, to run. But I stayed still, barely breathing. "She should be grateful we even let her stick around in this family," my father continued. "I don't know why she bothers. She'll never really belong." And then, silence. He had never meant to call me. He had forgotten to hang up. The line went dead. My apartment suddenly felt too quiet, the silence crashing into me like a wave. My heart thudded so loudly I could hear it echo in my chest. I sat there, unmoving. They had no idea that for 6 years I had been the one keeping the roof over their heads. They thought their mortgage was with the bank, but it wasn't. It was with EM Capital, the investment company I had quietly created with the help of my financial advisor, Daniel Rhodes. After they nearly lost their house on Maplewood Lane, I bought their mortgage out from the bank, silently, without credit, without thanks. They never bothered to read the fine print. They never questioned the name on the checks. They didn't know. And I realized something else now. They never would have cared. All my life, I had bent and folded myself to win my father's approval. I outworked everyone, climbed higher in my career, made more money than he ever dreamed of. But it had never been enough. It would never be enough. This was the moment everything shifted. I let out a slow breath, steadying my hands as I reached for my laptop. I opened the folder that contained all the mortgage documents, payment schedules, and ownership agreements. My father thought I was nothing, a disappointment, but he was about to learn exactly who had been holding him up for years, and in 7 days he was going to get the surprise of his life. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, his words playing on repeat like a broken recording. She was a mistake. It wasn't just cruel, it was conviction. He believed it, deep in his bones, that I should never have existed. Like my entire life was some kind of burden. You'd think I'd be used to it by now. My father was never one to hand out praise. Even as a kid, straight A's weren't enough. Promotions? Expected. Buying my first home? Waste of money. No matter what I achieved, it was never seen. Never acknowledged, always criticized. And yet, I still held on to a fragile hope that maybe, if I just kept pushing, I'd prove him wrong. That he'd finally see me. That hope died with that phone call. By sunrise, the grief was gone. Numbness took its place. I got out of bed, made a cup of bitter black coffee, sat down at my desk and opened the folder titled EM Capital, Property, Docker 12, Morgan Residence. That house, their house, was in my name. The mortgage had been transferred to EM Capital years ago, when they were months from foreclosure. I still remember the night my mother had called me crying, begging for help. My father? He was too proud to ask. I stepped in anyway. I built the perfect system. They thought they were paying the bank, but every check went straight to my LLC. Of course, I was covering most of the cost myself. 6 years, thousands a month, all so they could live in peace. All without ever saying thank you. They didn't have to grovel. I never asked for that, but I expected basic respect. I clicked through the documents, each line a quiet reminder of how much I had sacrificed for people who never saw me. And that's when I remembered something Daniel had said when we structured the deal. Let's add a purchase option clause, just in case. Back then, I had laughed. What could possibly go wrong? Now I knew, and I was done playing nice. I had never asked for a thank you, not once, in all those years of covering the mortgage. I didn't need them to grovel, but I had hoped, expected even, for a shred of basic decency. I scrolled through the digital files, each line of legal language confirming what I already knew. My hands were steady as I combed through the details. When I first arranged the buyout, Daniel, my financial advisor, had strongly recommended a purchase option clause. A legal safety net, he called it. Just in case things ever got ugly. I had laughed back then. What could possibly go wrong? Now I wasn't laughing. If they missed even one payment, EM Capital could seize full ownership of the house immediately. No grace period, no appeals. From that moment forward, my parents would legally be month-to-month renters. And if they couldn't pay rent, I could evict them, fully within the law. They had no idea how much control I held in my hands. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of it settle over me. My father, the man who called me a failure, had been living under my roof all along. A bitter smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. I had the power to take everything from them. The only question now was, did they deserve it? As if the universe were responding, my phone buzzed. Mom, hey sweetheart, any chance you can come by for dinner Sunday? We'd love to see you. I stared at the message. The last time she invited me for dinner, it ended with a thinly veiled plea for money. I thought about ignoring it, but something inside me shifted. If my father could pretend to care, I could pretend too. Me? Sure. Looking forward to it? A lie, but a necessary one. Before I shut my laptop, there was one last thing I needed to do. I opened my messages and found Uncle Henry, my dad's older brother. He had always been the exception in our family, the one person who treated me like more than a burden. Me. Hey, Uncle Henry, can I ask you something? Has Dad ever said anything strange about me? Anything I should know? His reply came fast. Uncle Henry. Elena, we need to talk. It's worse than you think. My chest tightened. Worse? My phone rang. I picked up immediately. Uncle Henry? He sighed, heavy and low. I've kept quiet for too long, Elena. But after what I heard last week, I can't anymore. I braced myself. What did he say? A pause. Then, they don't just badmouth you behind your back. They're planning something. My pulse quickened. Your father? He's been digging into your finances. He told your mother that if you didn't cough up more money willingly, he'd find a way to force your hand. My ears rang. Force my hand? How? Uncle Henry didn't sugarcoat it. He mentioned calling your job, trying to get you fired, maybe even alerting the IRS. He said he'd ruin your reputation if it meant getting what they wanted. A cold, focused fury coiled in my stomach. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was war. I took a slow breath, my fists clenched tight. Uncle Henry, I need something from you. Anything, sweetheart. I need proof. I didn't know exactly what they were planning, but one thing was clear. They still thought I was the same desperate daughter begging for scraps of their love. They had no idea who they were messing with, and in a few short days, they were going to find out. I spent the next 48 hours preparing. If my father wanted to play dirty, I'd show him just how dangerous underestimating me could be. The first call I made was to Daniel. Elena, he greeted me warmly. Calling for a chat, or should I be worried? Not exactly a social call, I replied, tapping a pen against my desk. I need you to confirm something for me. Property number 12. If the Morgans miss a payment, how quickly can I act? Daniel didn't skip a beat. Immediately, he said, the purchase clause gives EM Capital full ownership the second they default, legally airtight. They'd have no way to fight it, unless they can come up with $350,000 in cash to buy you out. I let out a sharp breath. They can't. Not even close. Then they're done, Daniel said simply. A strange calm settled over me. But good. I need you to keep an eye on their account. I've got a feeling this month's payment is going to bounce. Daniel chuckled. You might be right. From what I can see, their balance is dangerously low. If they don't come up with $5,800 by the 15th, they're toast. I glanced at my calendar. 4 days. 4 days until everything changed. If they didn't magically come up with $5,800 by the 15th, they were finished. I checked the calendar. 4 days. 4 days until the man who called me a failure would be forced to face the truth, that he'd been living off the daughter he despised. 4 days until he'd have no choice but to beg me for help, and I wouldn't give it. On Sunday, I drove to my parents' house like nothing had changed. The moment I pulled up to the place, my place now, an odd wave of detachment hit me. This house had once been my sanctuary. Now it felt like enemy ground. As I stepped onto the driveway, the front door swung open. Elena, sweetheart. Come in, my mother sang, all false cheer. The warmth in her voice didn't reach her eyes. It never did. Not anymore. But I played along. Inside, the scent of garlic and roasted chicken filled the air, but even that smelled artificial. My father sat at the head of the table, arms folded, face unreadable. My mother fluttered about with dishes, arranging everything just so, like a perfect dinner might mask whatever they were about to ask. My brother Nathan leaned back in his chair, smirking. He'd never had to work for our father's affection. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, despite having no real accomplishments to speak of. I took my seat, keeping my expression neutral. Elena, my father finally said, voice thick with strained politeness. It's good to see you. I nodded. You too, Dad. The silence that followed was sharp, uncomfortable. Then my mother jumped in, sugary sweet. We've been thinking a lot about family lately, she said, reaching for my hand across the table, and how important it is to support each other through tough times. I didn't flinch. That's true, my father added with a theatrical sigh, like he was the one making a sacrifice. The truth is, we need your help. There it was. The mortgage this month is... Well, it's a little tight, he added, still trying to sound dignified. A little tight? They were days away from default, and he still couldn't be honest. How much do you need? I asked, my voice calm, pretending not to know. My mother hesitated. We were hoping you could contribute an extra $3,000 this month, just until things even out. I almost laughed. They had no clue that I was already covering $800 every month to keep them afloat. And now they wanted even more? I set my fork down and tilted my head. That's a lot of money. It's nothing compared to what we've done for you, my father snapped, his act slipping. We raised you, fed you, gave you everything. The least you can do is support your family. I stared at him, the coldness in my blood matching the steel in my gaze. The least I could do? These were the same people who called me worthless behind my back, the same man who declared me a mistake, while living under the roof I paid for. I took a slow sip of water, hiding my rage behind indifference. I'll think about it. My mother let out a breath of relief. Oh, sweetheart. Thank you. We knew we could count on you. I forced a smile. They had no idea that in just 3 days, they'd lose everything. That night, Daniel called. They missed the payment, he said, his voice clipped. They what? I replied, feigning surprise. They didn't pay. Not a dime. As of midnight, EM Capital now holds full ownership of the property. I closed my eyes, letting the news settle like a final, satisfying click of a lock. It was done. The man who had belittled me my entire life was now, legally, my tenant. Do you want to start the eviction process? Daniel asked. Not yet, I said, eyes drifting to the framed family photo on my desk. It was old, back when I still believed my father might one day be proud of me. Not yet, I repeated softly. Let's see how far they're willing to fall before they break. And they would break. But this time, I wouldn't be the one picking up the pieces. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days passed in eerie silence. No texts, no calls, not a single manipulative message about family unity or how much they loved me. I knew why. They still hadn't realized it. They believed their payment had gone through, thought everything was under control. They had no idea that the house they called home was no longer theirs. At 9:07 a.m., Friday morning, the email arrived. Subject, urgent, default notice. Jeff, property number 12, from EM Capital, legal department. I opened it slowly, heart pounding, not with fear but with satisfaction. It was official. Due to non-payment of the agreed mortgage amount by the deadline of the 15th, the purchase clause has been exercised. Effective immediately, EM Capital is now the sole owner of the property at Maplewood Lane. Current occupants are now month-to-month tenants, subject to rental terms. Failure to comply may result in eviction. I stared at the screen, letting the words sink in. I didn't need to call them. They'd come to me. At 9:42 a.m., my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, another call. Dad. I let them wait. At 10:42 a.m., I finally answered. Elena. My mother's voice was sharp with panic. There's been some kind of mistake with the bank. We just got a notice saying we defaulted, but that can't be right. Please, you have to help us. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile tugging at my lips. It's not a mistake. Silence. What? She whispered. It's not a mistake, I repeated, enunciating every syllable. You didn't pay your mortgage. So the house? It's not yours anymore? A stunned pause. Elena, sweetheart, my mother stammered, trying to force a nervous laugh. What are you talking about? This is our home. I tilted my head, almost enjoying the unraveling. No, Mom, it was your home. But when you missed your payment, EM Capital took full ownership. Legally, you're now tenants. The line went dead quiet. Then my father's voice barked through, shaky but trying to sound in control. That's impossible. The mortgage is with the bank. We've been paying for years. I let the tension sit in the air for just a moment before delivering the final blow. You weren't paying the bank, Dad. You were paying me. The silence that followed was deafening. You're lying, he said, low and sharp, but I heard the panic bleeding through his tone. No, I'm not, I said quietly. 6 years ago, when you were days from losing this house, I bought the mortgage. You've been sending checks to EM Capital ever since. You thought it was some faceless lender. It was me. I paused, letting the words sink in. I've owned this house for years. A small gasp escaped my mother. My father cursed under his breath, and then from somewhere nearby, Nathan's voice chimed in, laced with mockery. You mean we've been paying rent to our loser sister this whole time? He laughed, cruel and condescending. No wonder this whole thing's a mess. You probably screwed up the paperwork just like you screw up everything else. My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice steady. Well, since you think I screw everything up, I said coolly, you're going to love this. Rent is now due in 30 days. And if you can't pay? A pause. You're getting evicted. Elena, wait, my mother began, but my father cut her off. This is a bluff, he growled. You wouldn't actually do this to your own family? I let out a short, bitter laugh. Wouldn't I? I thought about the years I'd spent holding them up, financially, emotionally, while they tore me down behind my back. I remembered that recorded call, his voice calling me a mistake, and the betrayal that followed. They hadn't just been ungrateful. They'd plotted to ruin me if I didn't give them more. My father always believed I was too weak to stand up for myself. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. I've already spoken to my attorney, I said flatly. If you don't pay, you're out. And if you try anything, manipulation, threats, or accidental damage to the property, I'll press charges. You ungrateful little. My father started. I hung up before he could finish the sentence. Within minutes, the messages started flooding in. Mom, Elena, please, don't do this. We're family. Let's talk. Dad, you'll regret this. Mark my words. Nathan, you think you're so clever. You're just a bitter little nobody. We'll take the house back. Watch. I read every message. Then I blocked their numbers. For the first time in my life, I didn't owe them anything. And I was finally free to stop pretending otherwise. I read every message. Then I blocked their numbers, one by one. I had spent my entire life bending over backward to earn their approval. Now, I was done. I leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting to the window as the afternoon light spilled in. For the first time in what felt like forever, the pressure was gone. I wasn't holding them up anymore. They were going to have to stand on their own. And if they collapsed, that was their problem, not mine. The days that followed were eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, no guilt-laced messages pleading for a second chance. Part of me had expected my mother to show up at my door in tears, desperate for forgiveness. I half imagined my father storming in, shouting, demanding I take it all back. I even thought Nathan might try to find some loophole or technicality to outsmart me. But none of that came. Just silence. I knew what that meant. They weren't accepting defeat. They were regrouping, planning their next move. 3 days later, their next desperate attempt arrived. It was a Wednesday morning, and I was at work, sipping lukewarm coffee when my phone buzzed. A call from an unknown number. I let it ring out. A minute later, another call. Then, an email. Subject: urgent. Home foreclosure dispute from Hastings Law Offices. I opened it. Dear Ms. Morgan, we've been retained by your parents, Frank and Martha Morgan, in relation to the recent foreclosure of their home on Maplewood Lane. They believe there may have been a misunderstanding and would like to explore options for reinstating ownership. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to avoid further legal complications. Sincerely, John R. Hastings. I couldn't help but smirk. Of course they hired a lawyer. I forwarded the email to Daniel, my financial advisor. Not even 10 minutes passed before he called, laughing. They're reaching now, he said. They don't have a leg to stand on. They signed everything, didn't they? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Every clause, Daniel confirmed. The mortgage, the transfer, the purchase option, it's all airtight. They have no case. You're legally in the clear. I exhaled slowly, a deep sense of validation washing over me. I figured, I murmured. But they're not going to stop, are they? Daniel chuckled grimly. Probably not. But it doesn't matter. There's nothing they can do to change the outcome. He was right, but I knew my father. Frank Morgan wasn't the kind of man who admitted defeat. Not when his pride was at stake. Not when the person who'd outplayed him was his own daughter. They'd push until they had nothing left to push with. That night, as I was finishing up dinner, my phone rang again. Uncle Henry. I picked up immediately. Hey, Uncle. I just got off the phone with your father, he said bluntly, skipping the pleasantries. His voice was tight. You need to be careful. My heart skipped. What's going on? He's not just going the legal route anymore. Uncle Henry sighed. He's digging for other ways to get to you. A chill crept up my spine. What kind of ways? He's calling your workplace, trying to stir things up, said he's going to get you fired if you don't give the house back. My stomach turned. You're serious? I wish I wasn't, he said. He told me, word for word, that if you won't give it up willingly, he'll ruin your career. Said something about contacting HR, filing a complaint, even accusing you of fraud. I shut my eyes, took a slow breath. Of course he would. When cornered, my father didn't reflect. He retaliated. But this wasn't just about the house anymore. He wanted to destroy me, and I wasn't going to wait around for him to make the first move. The next morning, I walked into HR myself. Elena, my manager Lauren, greeted me warmly. What's up? I offered a tight smile. Can we talk privately? It's important. Concern flickered in her eyes, but she nodded and led me into her office. Once the door shut, I took a breath. I need to give you a heads up, I said. My father? He's going to try and get me fired. Her brows furrowed. What? I explained everything. The house, the foreclosure, the threats, the smear campaign he was planning. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and blew out a breath. Elena, let me be clear, she said firmly. You are not going anywhere. Relief hit me like a wave. We deal with family drama more than you'd think, she continued. People try to weaponize personal issues to cause problems at work. If he calls, we'll document everything. But I promise you, he doesn't have the power to touch your job. She gave me a small, reassuring smile. I'll loop in our legal team just in case. If he even breathes in the wrong direction, we'll shut it down. I nodded, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. For the first time, I realized he couldn't hurt me anymore. Not here. Not in the life I built without him. I'll notify our legal team just in case, Lauren added, her voice calm but firm. If your father steps even 1 foot out of line, we'll hit him with a cease and desist so fast he won't know what hit him. I exhaled, slow and deep. It was the kind of breath you don't realize you've been holding for years. In that moment, I felt the weight of something I hadn't even known was still sitting on my shoulders begin to lift. My father hadn't just lost his house, he'd lost control over me. That night, it happened. A knock, loud and sharp, echoed through my apartment. Not a soft, uncertain tap, a demand. I knew it was them before I even opened the door. I swung it open to find my parents standing there. My father, stiff and furious, his face red with restrained rage. My mother, tear-streaked and desperate, her eyes swollen from crying. Elena, she whispered, please. I folded my arms. What do you want? We need the house back, my father said. His voice was low but laced with threat. You have no right to do this to us. I tilted my head slightly, unbothered. I have every right, legally, financially, morally. My mother clasped her hands, pleading. We raised you, we gave you everything, and now you're punishing us? For what? I cut in, my voice sharp and unwavering. For calling me a failure? For saying I was a mistake? For trying to ruin my life the moment I stopped handing you money? She flinched. My father's jaw tightened. You're being cruel. I laughed, short, humorless. No, Dad, I'm being fair. A heavy silence settled between us, years of tension boiling just beneath the surface. Then his eyes darkened, his voice a sneer. You'll regret this, Elena. You think you're winning, but you're not. You'll never be anything without us. One day, you'll come crawling back. Something in me snapped, not in anger, in clarity. That final thread of hope, that one day he'd change, That one day he'd look at me with pride finally broke. I met his gaze, calm and certain. "Then I guess we'll find out," I said. And I closed the door in their faces, firm, final. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. I stood there for a long time, one hand still on the doorknob, my heart racing. I had spent years chasing his approval, years believing that if I just did enough, achieved enough, proved enough, he'd see me. But the truth hit me, crystal clear. Nothing would ever be enough for them. And finally, that was okay. The next morning, I sent the final notice. Subject: Notice to vacate. Property, number 12. From EM Capital Legal Department. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, as previously stated, the mortgage agreement for the property on Maplewood Lane has been terminated due to non-payment. Your tenancy is officially ended. You are required to vacate the premises within 30 days. Failure to do so will result in formal eviction proceedings. Please remove all personal belongings before the deadline to avoid legal complications. Sincerely, Elena Morgan, owner, EM Capital. I stared at the email for a long time before hitting send. This was it. They were officially out of my life. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. My mother called me 27 times that day. I didn't answer. My father left one voicemail, just one. "You'll regret this. One day you'll come crawling back. And when you do, we won't be here." I listened to it twice, then deleted it. Nathan tried one last desperate attempt. "Congrats, Elena. You just tore this family apart. Hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't reply. They had spent years making me feel like I was the problem, like I wasn't enough, like I should be grateful just to exist in their world. But now, they were the ones without a home, and I was finally free. 30 days passed. I didn't visit the house, didn't check in, didn't ask if they needed help. I didn't need to. Daniel handled everything. He confirmed they moved out the day before the deadline, most likely to avoid the shame of being officially evicted. The house was left mostly intact. They took what they wanted and left the rest in piles of trash. Typical. Still, I drove by one last time, just to see it. The house was quiet, empty. The place I had once called home, the place where I grew up, cried, dreamed, was now mine alone. And standing in the doorway, I didn't feel sadness, not guilt, not nostalgia, just relief. I pulled out my phone and made a call. They're gone. My voice was calm as I said it into the phone. Uncle Henry exhaled on the other end. "How do you feel?" I paused. Then, slowly, a small smile spread across my face. "Lighter," I said. 2 weeks later, I sold the house. The market was strong, and it sold within days. Clean, easy, final. And the profits? I didn't hoard them. I used them to start a fund for young women trying to escape financially abusive families. Girls like me who were taught from birth that love came with conditions, that survival came with a price, that you owed everything to people who only gave pain in return. Because I knew what it felt like to be trapped, to believe you had to earn your right to exist. But through this long, brutal journey, I'd finally learned the truth. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who actually shows up for you, who supports you, who loves you without keeping score. And in the end, my real family wasn't them. It was me. 3 months later, a message appeared in my inbox. It was from her. Subject: Please. Mom. Elena, please. I don't know where else to go. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time. A few months ago, it would have broken me. I would have sat in a storm of guilt, asking myself if I was being too harsh, wondering if I was cruel, if this was too much. But not anymore. I didn't hesitate. I simply clicked delete. Because some bridges, they deserve to burn. And this time, I wasn't turning back.